This is the Williams Center launch of Red Wheelbarrow number 12. And what an issue it is, jam-packed full of wonderful poems from you. And once again, it's my pleasure to say it's about our community. Okay, we need your poems, which we have, and we're going to enjoy them. We also need your support in the donation box, okay, because we do have to pay rent, unfortunately, but we do. But before I begin and introduce our featured reader, I'd like to take a moment to remember someone who's not here tonight and who has been such an amazing part of this venue over the years. And that's Michael O'Brien, who passed away earlier this year. And we'd like to offer our condolences to his widow, Moira O'Brien, who's here, and wish her the best in dealing with this terrible sorrow. You know, Mike loved this venue. He was one of the few people who used to give me a nod when one of my poems was good when I read at the open mic, and he gave me the thumbs down very fairly when it wasn't. And I appreciate it because you learn that way. Michael, we miss you tremendously.
Yeah, true.
We have a wonderful feature today. Arthur Russel. He's a poet. Once a year, Jim Klein, who's the editor-in-chief, selects one of the poets that he knows, who he feels has made a tremendous contribution during the year with his poetry. And this year it's Arthur Russel, and it is so well deserved. Let's hear it for him. I also want to thank Frank Rubino, who took my place as managing editor. What a wonderful job Frank did. And of course, as always, Jim Klein, the editor, and really the father of us all. And the editor-in-chief, Melanie Klein, and Mark Fogarty, managing editor, Claudia Sara, who does the designs, and Don Zerulli, who made the wonderful drawings. Let me turn it over the mic to Arthur, who's going to read some of his fabulous poems.
Wait, the fabulous ones? This is the greatest day of the week for sure, maybe way more than that. I'm really happy. That's enough to say, just not to be here with you. And you know, you stole my thunder, Morale, because I wanted to make sure that I thank Jim as the editor who selected my poems to be featured, and Melanie and Ken Burnett, and the Gang of Five, Claudia and John and Don and Anton, who couldn't be with us tonight. I'm very sorry about that. And of course, Morale forgot to thank Barbara Adair, who took the fabulous picture of me that's inside the book. She took 57 pictures of me in her backyard in color, black and white. She didn't take any nude pictures, and that was a relief to both of us. We had a great time, and I wanted to begin with a tradition that's really John Trouse's tradition, by reading a poem by somebody other than me. And I thought about reading something by him, but I decided not to because he wasn't worthy. But I wanted to read a great poem by Zev Shank, and I got his permission to read this, that he's not going to read it tonight. And it's a beautiful way to start our reading tonight. It's in the book if you want to open to page 129, or if you just want to listen to my mellifluous voice, close your eyes, and I'll take you away to a magical place. It's called Country Song Without Melody. So easy to love, so easy to love. Why must you be so easy to love? All that is noble in being in love is lost on a woman so easy to love. That extra hard mile that measures true love is lost on a woman so easy to love. With you, I think only of how lucky I am to be loved by a woman so easy to love. Why not for one evening turn ugly and mean, sneer and stop being so easy to love? Just once, let me tell you, though friends think I'm mad, I'm here for you, but you're so painful to love. But you're easy to love, so easy to love. Oh, why must you be so easy to love? That's Zeb's. And it's a good one, as so many of his are. And then I wanted to read a poem that's not. I have one to read at the beginning that's not in the book, and one to read at the end that's not in the book, sort of like a capper for the evening. This is such a great crowd. I'm so happy. This is called This Thing I Do. This thing I do when I take off my drawers is to push them past my knees and pull my right foot out, then let them drop down to the left and flip them up to catch them in my right hand. That little move defines me in a way that I will miss when I no longer can. So, thank you. This is the greatest poetry group venue dealio in the whole of northern New Jersey. There's nothing that even comes close to it. And I feel, I've said this before, so I feel so welcomed in this group. I've flowered in this group. My poetry has come a long way in this group, though I was great before I met you. And I'm so grateful to all of the people I've met who've sort of humanized me and taken me under their wing in a really great way. And you know, Alice and Zev are here, and their group has been a really important part of it. But this group is better. It's a wonderful group. So I did this on Friday, but I want to do it again. I want to read the poems in my collection that are in here that are about the other poets I know and the ones who've made me who I am. And there happen to be 4 of them in here. The first one I'm going to read is called To Sara, and it was written in response to a contest that was being held in honor of Whitman's 200th birthday, which was May 31st of this year. And the challenge was to write a poem based on the line from Crossing Brooklyn Ferry that went, "What is it then between us?" And it was about Whitman talking to the future generations and saying, you know, this water that I'm seeing off the ferry, this is the same water you're going to see. Or maybe he said it in reverse. These gulls that you see, they're the same gulls I see. And we, across these generations, share this wonderful thing. But since I'm not Whitman and not macro the way he is, and much more micro for those of you who know me, I decided to write a poem that would try to incorporate that theme, but do it in a way that was a little more in keeping with my style. And so this poem actually is called To Sara, and it starts off with a quotation from Yeats, of all people, but then it moves away from that pretty quickly. To Sara, when you are old and gone of mind, and I am dead, animal dead, keep this rent-producing property, and please collect the rents. Go out if you must in your pink house slippers with fur on the instep and your shepherd on a leash. Mutter that stuff about your mother at the bus stop. Pick up empty bottles from the street and do without combing your hair, but please, Sara, stomp up the stairs on the first so they hear you coming. Shave in a haircut, knock, and call out, "Landlord," with your eye against the peephole. Don't trust Gruden, the plumber. He'll sell you your own toilet. But Harold is reliable for legal. Also, Sylvia at Citibank is good for munis, but don't buy an annuity from her. So much has gone wrong. In the kitchen, and these crutches, and Elliot with his asthma, and the physical miss between us. And I've been so bitter. The books in the back bedroom are strangers to me now. Remember the Kandinsky? That skinny book of Kandinsky prints? That was such a happy day. It's in the back bedroom, in the shelves under the window. Now I'm only Goldberg the landlord with crutches. And you are Goldberg the landlord with crutches' wife. When you die, Sara, Russell, the guy who owns next door, the car wash, will buy this building from your estate. And then he'll send his son, that pretentious prick, to clean out our apartment. And he'll smoke a cigarette in our back bedroom and look out through the accordion gates down Church Avenue towards Borough Park, where we first met outside the candy store when you asked me to go buy a cigarette, 2 cents for Lucy, and it came with a match. He'll throw almost everything away, but he'll find the Kandinsky book. He'll sit on that bookcase, smoke his cigarette, look out the window, read the introduction, admire the pictures, and keep it for a souvenir of how he suffered working for his father, or as some kind of perverted proof that he is superior to all the mercantile idiots like his father and me who worked for what we have. He'll keep that Kandinsky on his bookshelves when he goes to school in Syracuse. Keep it in his apartments in Brighton, Park Slope, Greenwich Village, Chelsea. Keep it when he gives up his stupid dream of becoming an artiste. He never had talent to become a lawyer, get married, move to Jersey, have a kid, and bookshelves everywhere he went. 20, 30 years boxing up the same books, college books, grad school books, his wife's mysteries, until one day, after his wife leaves him, he'll remember you, Sara, and your scruffy shepherd, and me with my 2 amputated feet lost in a trolley car accident, swinging on polio crutches from one property to the next, shaving a haircut knocking, calling out, "Landlord!" And he'll remember us as images of the style and loss. He likes to think that he understands the way that what you wanted as a kid can be shunted into tedious commerce. And he'll go down to his basement and pull out the Kandinsky book and see how the show was mounted in May of 1945, just months after Kandinsky himself had died. And he'll picture us, Sara, when we were young and hip, how we went to Harlem to see Lucky Roberts play the stride piano, how we went to see Kandinsky at the Museum of Non-Objective Art before it was called the Guggenheim, being in love, before the trolley, before Elliot and his asthma made me a bitter puss, buying that book on the last day of the show, and it was such a big deal for you. You said, "Please, Elias, please let's get the book in my ear." And you said it with your lips on my ear, so it hummed in my head. So I had to buy it for you. And what would later be your stiff gray hair was beautiful brown, and down to your shoulders. In waves I compared to Barbara Stanwyck. And you'd say, "No, I don't look at all like her." But you did. Thank you so much. I want to read my other Whitman poem, the one I should have submitted because that one did not win. It didn't even come close. It wasn't even a finalist. This is called At the Battery with Whitman.
You have a page number.
Yeah, 28. But the mellifluous voice is going to lead you where you need to go. And if you need to look at a picture of me, Barbara Adair's picture is beautiful. At the Battery with Whitman. Whitman tossed 20 copies of Leaves of Grass into a litter basket on the corner of Beaver and Broadway, as if they were palm card adverts for a late night drag queen lip sync at Esquilita, and he'd given up getting anyone to take one. So he bought a pint of bourbon with food stamps from the Sikh at the New York Wine Exchange. I was in there buying a long, narrow bag of roasted peanuts for lunch, humping files at the Hamilton Courthouse. My feet hurt, and I had to be back by 2. But there was Whitman, soup in his beard, and blousy shirt out at the lapels, preparing to uncork a pint of Primrose. So I asked how he was doing. And he laughed, this mellow laugh, that he'd been better and he hoped to be again. I asked if he wanted company. He eyed my bag of nuts. And then we looked at one another over the chasm of years. I'd never noticed his eyes. He had a milky gray ring around the brown iris and a single thick hair that grew from a notch in the ridge of his nose. I was surprised by a kind of pinwheel restlessness in his energy, the way his eyes swooped to something near my feet. In Battery Park, near the East Coast Memorial for the ones who died in the Atlantic, whose black stone eagle faces liberty, we sat and passed his bottle back and forth. I shook some nuts into his hand. Somehow, I got to talking about Liza Minnelli. I'd seen her at the Palace with Kate Bearfield on my birthday in 1975. Whitman seemed interested in Liza's difficulties, famous mother, talent, drug dependency. He started to tell me about the troubles he'd had with a preacher out in Southold when I realized that I brought up Liza because she's popular with gay men. I felt like such a bonehead. But he hadn't noticed. The bourbon was harsh, good for spitting after, good for gazing at the water in between. And when I asked if he was working on anything new, he jumped up and said he was going back to the litter basket to get his books. Moving right along, I want to read a poem about a poet who was really important to me, even though we only knew each other a little bit. He's a guy who was introduced to me by the woman who lived downstairs from me at the apartment I rented in Syracuse when I was up there in 1982 getting my master's degree. She said, "You gotta meet this guy, Dave Dwyer. He used to live up here with me, and now he lives out in North Dakota with his famous wife, Kathleen Norris." And so one day, as this poem describes, he came to New York, and we went to the bar at 1 Avenue and spent a lot of hours together. So this is a poem about that. It's called The Tavern, on page 26. The Tavern Where We Settled the Affairs of the World. The long dark bar at 1 Avenue, decked with Spanish peanuts, reached its apotheosis the night we melted the wax off our ammunition and dared to speak as though we were tongue-and-groove floorboards in the low-ceilinged room where a disputed king was born. We bent our crooked talk like fingers into bottles where something small and dear lies just beyond your logic. Ardor rose like alcohol in the meat of our minds, like krill-stuffed whales floating tummy to the moon on the night sea surface. We debated the history of the matchbook. We sniffed the righteous night through long mustaches and read aloud from a skein of J. Meek's poems, new ones from Carnegie Mellon. The bartender dried a glass with a towel. You could smoke in bars then. Our eyelids draped our eyes at closing. We licked our lips and stood new-shouldered at the obdurate doorway, admiring the cats and dogs that had fallen from the sky and our beards into our beds. And we left that place as regal as ermine and swept the guttered streets in search of oysters with a friendship made as a drink is formed by the shape of the glass that holds it. No, I will go all night if you let me, so please speak up if it's getting to be too much. I got one more from the book I want to read, and then that one I promised to read at the end. The one I want to read next is also about a poet's story. It's about Greg Pardlow, the guy who won the Pulitzer Prize about 3 years ago. And I got invited to be in his master class at the Poet's House, and I wanted to impress the shit out of him, so I went and got his book and tried to read it, and I really couldn't because it was too hard. But I plugged ahead as the poem tells the story and found a place where I could meet him, thinking that if I wrote a poem for him and brought it to his workshop, he'd be really impressed with me and get me published, and that didn't happen either. It's called Diaspora. And it has a little thing under it that says 8 bars for Greg Partlow, because the idea of this poem is that it's a jazz riff, a response to a riff of his. So, it's got a lot. Accepted to your master class while ignorant of what besides a Pulitzer you were, I stopped to get your book, and after being charmed by that first poem on being born, was daunted by the density you reference in your work. Excluded from the promised land of meaning for the sin of being shallow, I started leafing forwards from the back, trying like the hotel thief who jiggles every doorknob to find just one unlocked, to burgle for its billfold sense. The keys and coins left on the desk, the lacy bra inside the dresser drawer, the belted pants across the chair, the cell phone plugged and glowing in the bathroom sink, and there I found your poem about the Quaker parrots living in the ball fields and the graveyards of Brooklyn. And that began a recognition hometown comfort groove, a happy hope, a tennis court of coming at me balls. I recognized those parrots and my Brooklyn in the one where you had walked. Your voice became a ticket to a reading where Whitman, Moore, and Auden, Hart, and Lured were sipping wine and pocketing the pretzel snacks for later. And the only thing that poems have ever done to make a way for someone I could tumble talk to, native tongue to tongue, came fresh as a baguette in a bicycle basket. So when I heard you call out, I should raise my eyes to see those parrots in the trees, I shouted like a congregation that I have raised my eyes to a Midwood Brooklyn sycamore on the walk we'd take around my parents' block to smoke some pot before Thanksgiving dinner. And I have seen the stick nest of the Quaker parrots jutting like a beaver lodge above the leaf-strewn lawn of the Orthodox Jews who invaded our assimilated Jewish neighborhood in the decades since we siblings moved to Jersey and Connecticut, unaware that kings would one day rise again. And I have heard their noisy chattered ruckus, though to me they sounded less like Diz and Bird at Minton's Playhouse popping peanuts than housewives calling deli orders out to countermen in lab coats and smudged white paper side caps on a Friday at Blue Ribbon while their cars were double parked on Avenue J. So when my sister touched my sleeve to pass the roach to me, I pointed as first one and then another, green as Kool-Aid, showed up at the dark mouth of the nest and pulsed their wings, then flew away. I asked her, are those parrots or a figment of the weed? And when we got back to the house from our pre-Thanksgiving walk, my Uncle Fred and Cindy's boyfriend Robert watching Dallas play the Giants in the kitchen, dipping crackers in the baked brie before the guests arrived, I told my mother, peeling carrots for the crudité, there were parrots in the tree outside the Burson's house, and she said, Arthur, darling, Burson moved out years ago. The Yamis live there now. So I was riffing on diaspora, on everything that smacked me, even your epigraph that said that love was being as 100,000, which put me distantly in mind of Lear, whose heart would break into 100,000 flaws, or ere he weep for loss of child's fealty, as a kingdom he was banished from, but only as a quote that you might know, and not because it really fit, because sometimes when you solo, you wind up in a cul-de-sac and lose a measure banking out. Those winter, still dark mornings leading to your master class, I labored by the yellow lamp beside my desk to trade these 8s with you, to raise a sort of ruckus that a Pardlow parrot mic, to lay my song on top of yours, to see your parrot avatars of love, to answer back with something from my nesting past that sang a siphoned song, then finish with a bit about the cognoscenti, who nowadays give Quaker parrot tours to day trip hipsters, who are made to sign agreements to keep nesting sites a secret, lest the poachers catch and turn those parrots into pets, the very pets that they were meant to be when they were shipped from Argentina, as the legend goes, some 60 years ago, and their crate broke open on the tarmac at JFK, from whence they came, like all of us, to Brooklyn. He didn't like it. He fixed the grammar a little bit, put in a couple of commas, and sent me on my way. I want to read one last poem. I want to just thank, this is the most amazing thing. You're going to see me later because I'm doing the calling up of everybody else. But my time will be over. Not really. And this is just wonderful. So thank you for putting up with me and all of the other things you do with me. I really appreciate it. This is a brand new poem. Only Frank knows it. And he approves of it. So, careful. It's called In Autumn. When you stop to watch the geese, what do you think about? I mean, if you let them all the way in, are they individuals, a team of strangers, or a symbol of passing time? They're numerous and noisy enough to grab your attention at least a couple of times during the weeks of their migration. Banked against a white sky, blue sky, black sky, wet sky, above the trees or sailing over Franklin Avenue, they'll interrupt you with their honking as you get ready to feed a meter, as you drain and coil your garden hoses. Whenever it happens, you're the one staying, and they're the ones going. That never varies. You're on the ground, they're in the air. You wonder who's got the better bargain. Stupid question, but you ask it anyway. They beat their handsome, long, dark wings. They haul their oblong bodies through the white sky with their beaks set hard towards a place they're sure of. And you stand there in the middle of life with your hands and mouth and whatever else you use to earn your keep. You stand there, you watch them, and you have your ruminations like these, in which the geese are nothing more than natural machines with no understanding of what it means to be alive, flying by compulsion with no sense of why. And you wonder if they look down and think that you are a natural machine, no more alive than they are, standing at a parking meter by compulsion. There is a scissoring sadness in the way the wedge of them disappears, passing over a copse of trees that have mostly lost their leaves, and how their honking continues to reach you after they go, how it seems to bounce off the low clouds like a clarinet being played inside a closet. Thank you ever so much.